so this is a plenary session. It starts with, in a way, the fundamental question. How are we going to make UBI a reality? And each of the speakers comes from a place where they've got some kind of strategy. So it's a chance for people to talk about that experience so far. I think it's still fairly early days for most people, but it's a chance to talk about what's their thinking about how they're taking things forward, what's happening locally. Very short little talk from folk, and then I'm going to try and facilitate questions and a discussion, say, around the idea of strategy. How do we make this a reality? I think probably it's best if the speakers come up here. It's probably more, I'd feel more comfortable if I was, rather than sitting down or kind of just having to pop up. So we'll kind of physically get you to move. Maybe we'll start. Maybe Karen, would you be happy? You're a vicar. Vicars are used to standing in front of strangers and saying sensible things. So we'll start with Karen from Birmingham, and then we'll introduce you each one at a time.
Hello. It's lovely to be here. I'm always a bit honoured and humbled when I get invited to things like this, because I just think I'm not an academic in this field at all, in any way, shape or form. So I always feel really humbled when I do get invited. So thank you for the invite, and it's an honour to be with you. Yes, I'm Karen. I'm a Methodist minister in the Birmingham circuit. I had to make an important decision a few months ago because I got the invite and I had to balance, hang on a minute, at the same day we've got a Reimagined Church conference going on the same day. What do I do? Well, it's a bit of a no-brainer because it was always going to be the basic income. Anything to do with the basic income was going to win, really. So they'll fill me all in about that when I get back. Why am I passionate about the basic income? Well, I think mainly you'll hear more about my story if you come to Toby and my presentation. That's a plug for us, Toby. But basically, I think I'm interested largely because I'm a working class girl. And I grew up on a council estate, and I've seen the struggles and experienced the struggles firsthand of what it feels like to live on the brink or on the poverty line, and to see my parents live that throughout their whole life, really, when things could have been a lot different. And so, as a Methodist minister, you know, and particularly in Methodism, social justice is rooted in our DNA. And so I just challenge my communities. That's what I've been doing, challenging my communities, preaching about it, gathering stories. I'll often give people a blank cheque and ask them, you know, what would you spend this on if you had a basic income? And it's quite revealing what that comes back as. And so things like that. But at the heart of it is people's story. You know, and I find story is vital to just gather, whatever story, you know, just to bring up that conversation. Have you heard about this concept? Do you know about this concept of the basic income? Do you know what it's about? And to feel what they feel. But then always to ask that question, what difference would it make in your life if you had this? And so that's what I do generally. I go around collecting stories. And so I'm at a point where I'm not quite sure what to do next. So I'm really encouraged and excited about where we could go from here. So I'm going to stop. I'm not going to use all my 7 minutes. I'm going to stop there, and then if you want to pick up, somebody wants to pick up on something straight away.
Quickly, can I? Yeah, sure. You say you're collecting all these stories. Yeah. How are you collecting them, and what are you doing with them?
Well, at the moment, that's a really good question, Richard, because that's all I'm doing. I'm collecting them, I'm writing them down, I've brought them with me, so I'm going to share the ones that I've been given permission to share in the workshop. Just to give people an idea of what I'm exactly doing, and just to get other people's ideas, really. And maybe just to give other people permission to just go out there and just collect those stories. So I'm at that point, you know, now, what do I do with all these stories? Where do I take them? I also work alongside Citizens UK, so we've got it on the agenda, basic income, under Families Better Off. And we're at that point again, we don't quite know what to do with this. It's a bit like a hot potato. So that's a really good question.
Do you have photographs as well? Or is it just
I haven't gone as far as taking photographs, that's my next step. But that's a bit of a, yeah. Sometimes you haven't got your camera on you when you're having a lot of these stories, and sometimes the stories that are being shared aren't. You know, they're quite emotional, and it's not always appropriate then to say can I just take a photo? So, yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. An important aspect of basic income is, I would say, the liberation of women. Yesterday was International Women's Day. The next speaker is also going to be a woman. That's some strange kind of link I did there. So I'm going to make Becca the next speaker, also from Birmingham, but with a long history in this fight.
Thanks, Simon. Hi everyone, good morning. Also, like Karen said, very happy to be here in Sheffield. I'm going to explain my thinking in answer to the question. I first heard about the idea of basic income around the time that the preparation was happening for the referendum in Switzerland, and it struck me straight away as a really powerful idea. And I immediately thought, how do I go about turning this into an expanded conversation? Sometimes when you first hear about it, you do feel a bit evangelistic about it. And at that point, I was employed as a community organiser, and I'd also, at that point, about 10 years, been a really active trade unionist, trade union branch officer, rep, for many years. So that was my kind of field of operation. I thought, what can I do in my own networks to start building this into something that's more widely known about and discussed. So looking at my own doorstep to begin with, I did speak to friends, family, immediate colleagues. First of all, Karen was one of them from my day job. And a few of us started just booking stalls at community festivals in the area, purely and simply saying to people, have you heard about this? What do you think? What would it mean for you personally? So, facts and figures are important and helpful, and policymakers are keen on those. But certainly politicians are much more keen on what's going on in the heads of people who might vote for them. So we wanted to really humanise the potential impact of this policy, and like Karen's already referred to, go out and ask people, how would this change your life? And as you can imagine, the range of responses that we got was so diverse, it was incredible, because it could touch everyone's life in a really different way. So we've started to gather some of those stories. We have got them captured in photographs, and I'll be sharing some of those in our workshop this afternoon as well with Patrick. And that was really helpful, and that was a little basis for us to start connecting with people in the local area that were very interested in this and wanted to do something further. Also, being a trade unionist, obviously, I went with it to my branch to see what the branch thought, and the branch was a big and, again, very diverse branch of people working in all kinds of different charities. A lot of them were actually employed by third sector care employers who pay very low wages for a very hard job. Disability support charities, all kinds of things, some faith charities as well were in there. So we're a very mixed bag. And I'm happy to say that my branch, at least, immediately really saw the benefit of this policy, and so we very quickly on, as a branch, adopted this as something we supported and something we wanted to try and further within the union. And we embarked on probably about 3 or 4 year, I'm going to call it a struggle. It was a lot of effort of trying to navigate how to get it debated at national conference so that we could potentially get the union to take an official position as a whole trade union. And that was just it was a lot of hustling and, kind of a numbers game, and it was all about everyone at national conference. If you've ever been to a trade union conference, everyone's got their own pet motion that they want to hear debated, and everyone's trying to, whether it's let's ban the sun, everyone wants their thing to be debated. And so we tried about 3 or 4 years in a row to get our motion to be heard, which wasn't even committing the union to something really hard and fast. It was just saying we think there could be value in this, we want to see it explored further, we think potentially it could be in our members' interest. So sadly, at the time when I ceased being an activist because I'm actually now employed by the trade union, and I can't therefore have any more say on the policies of the union. But at the time that I left the branch, we hadn't quite managed to get it debated at national conference. What we did manage was to really boost up the understanding of the idea in the region. So West Midlands region of the union was pretty well informed and pretty interested in this idea. And so my region of the union put together a manifesto when the West Midlands mayoral election was happening. And I'm very pleased to say that having a pilot for basic income was in the union's manifesto. And so we managed to intervene at that election, and we actually got to a point where all the candidates were asked about it, and 2 of the candidates had it in their manifesto. Sadly, not the winning candidates, which is a shame. But we were pleased with that. It was early on in the campaign we felt that was some sort of an achievement at least. My own branch, we had some very live stories we had a group of members who worked at a nursery, and they'd basically not been paid their wages over the Christmas period, and because they're employed, they obviously weren't entitled to any social security at all. So for them, it was very clear what the impact of this policy could be. So one of our members, Chantella, stood up at an event with 1,000 people there and said to the candidates, this is what it would mean for us. This is just one example, and this is why we're asking you about this idea. And the good news is, I won't say too much more because it's this is all potential, but it looks as if we may, next time the mayoral election comes around in the West Midlands, we may again have a candidate possibly that wants to include a basic income pilot in their manifesto, which is a great start point. But I'm still, I still think that there's way more work that needs to happen at the community level in terms of having more of those conversations and building a much wider movement for pushing for this idea from the bottom up. So I'm currently one of the directors for Basic Income UK, and at this point we're just getting prepared to be able to scale up and launch as an organisation that can support and assist local groups with resources and do some kind of light touch coordination to enable us to really expand understanding this idea a lot more. So it's fine to engage with decision makers, but unless they're feeling a large amount of pressure coming from the voters, then it's just conversations in rooms. So we won't really want to make this year the year that we go a lot bigger. We're getting ready to do that soon, very soon, which is exciting. I'm going to stop there.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Becca.
Thanks.
So next I'm going to ask Jack to speak. Jack is from Scotland, and there's no doubt at all. I'm going to make a plug for devolution here. I'm part of campaigning for, wouldn't it be nice if Sheffield could control some of its own destiny, or Yorkshire control some of its own destiny? One of the advantages of Scotland being able to do this, as it's probably taken the idea of basic income further politically than any other part of the country. So fantastic opportunity to hear about that from Jack.
So yeah, I'm Jack. I'm from Citizens Basic Income Network Scotland. Of course, basic income's unique selling point is its simplicity, so we try to obfuscate that as much as possible with a really long name for the organisation. And then the acronym CBINS means that we often get confused for like a refuse collection charity or something. So to sort of understand our way about going about this question, you really sort of have to understand the context in Scotland that Simon mentioned. So currently we have 4 local authorities, or members of 4 local authorities, with support from other agencies looking into, so devising a feasibility study into a basic income pilot in Scotland. So they're currently looking at the different things that need to be measured, the aims, the objectives of what a pilot might be, and they're to deliver this business case to the government in March 2020. So it could be as early as 2020 that a basic income pilot in Scotland gets underway. Of course, then the pilot would last 2, 3, however many years, with reporting then not after that. So we're really at the start of what is a long process, but that's really the context of basic income in Scotland. So with that in mind, CBINS, our real purpose is looking at the other end of the spectrum, because it's all well and good, a group of technocrats and councillors and policymakers doing great work, but sort of sat in the room devising this pilot or feasibility study. But really, basic income, the nature of the policy is that it should be something that we demand, that it's a grassroots movement behind it. And so that's really been our strategy for getting a basic income implemented in Scotland. In terms of doing that, we've engaged or looked to engage with other policy areas: housing, social care, entrepreneurship, and really sort of get buy-in or learn from what their perspective is on basic income. Could basic income improve the housing sector? Could basic income improve entrepreneurship in Scotland? And so we sort of, through the autumn, we facilitated a series of workshops, and we're now looking at the outputs from those, and they'll be launched at the Scottish Parliament in April. So you can look out for those. Apart from that, we're really keen on building this grassroots movement. So in earnest, that has meant organising workshops, meetups with people in Glasgow, in Edinburgh, and really going out and talking to different groups. I think once you start talking about basic income, the real energy and the almost a light goes on in people's heads when you first describe the idea to them. And we've been invited to speak at local political party branches, at cultural festivals, at charity organisations, even at an architecture and science fringe event. So a real gamut there. So it's really about getting in front of people and spreading the word that way. So our strategy essentially is, we're not technically a campaigning organisation ourselves, but we go out, inform people about basic income, and they then advocate for basic income in their own communities. And that's really been our strategy. The other side of that, as Karen mentioned, is the stories, people's stories. We've had great speakers at some of our meetups, and we've had people write blogs for us. People that who are artists and carers and entrepreneurs who are really involved, or really have a particular story to tell, whose lives would really be transformed by basic income. So we had a lady at a recent meetup who was an artist who'd been living abroad for a while, came back and found that there was basically no support for her to carry on her art, and she then, as a result, had to do other things in order to just earn her way, rather than doing the art that she wanted to do. So it's stories like that we think are really powerful. And once people hear these stories, allied to what a real transformation basic income would bring, we think would really grow that network of advocates, and therefore have a snowballing momentum effect, so that they would then inform others, and we would quite quickly gain a grassroots organisation. And we've already got seen that happening. We're ostensibly a Scotland-wide organisation, but even in our limited localities, i.e. Glasgow and Edinburgh currently, we've already seen large networks of volunteers and basic income advocates grow. So hopefully, if and when the pilots roll around, we'll have an informed public and a group of advocates willing to push for the idea once the pilots get going. So that's us.
Brilliant.
Very much. Thank you.
So that's very inspiring. And the next speaker. So I've only spoken to Patrick on the phone before now, and the reason I ended up speaking to Patrick was it's kind of embarrassing for UBI Lab Sheffield. Like we have this strategy of, right, we're going to develop this pilot, and we're going to try and get the council to want to have this pilot. And but of course in Sheffield, if you're not from Sheffield, then you've probably at least maybe heard of the tree debacle, and we have all sorts of political complexities. And many positives. We've got a strong Labour movement and we've got a strong Green movement, which both seem to me good things. But of course, they hate each other. And so the politics of this is difficult. And we've been sitting kind of working out how do we try and get this idea into the council and get support from the council, given this fraught political background. And then it turned out in the newspaper, Liverpool Council had agreed that they wanted to be a pilot for basic income, beating us to that objective. And so can I welcome Patrick Hurley, who's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in Liverpool and how you managed to achieve that.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, I'm Patrick from Liverpool. I am down as Councillor Patrick Hurley, and I hate being called Councillor Patrick Hurley. Makes me sound like I'm some big know-it-all, and I'm just so not. Yeah. I'm up for election in 2 months, so that might actually be who I am. I want to tell you a little bit about my background very shortly, because I've been asked to speak this morning about how to make basic income a reality. And the only answer to that question is, well, I don't bloody know. Nobody's made it a reality. You know, spoiler alert, there is no basic income in the UK. Yeah, so there is no basic income in the UK, so nobody knows how to make it a reality yet. We're all as expert as each other. Are there any experts? The most expert in the whole of the UK does not know how to make basic income a reality. I'm here to learn as much as to tell people. So I'll tell you what we've done to get to where we are in Liverpool. So I was elected in 2011, and I was elected completely by accident. I'm a Labour Party member, and I was asked to put my name forward to stand for council, and I had to be dragged kicking and screaming because I really didn't want to do it. So my colleague said to me, stand in this particular ward, which is a safe Lib Dem ward, you've got absolutely no chance of getting elected. 3 months before the election, Nick Clegg does his U-turn on tuition fees, which brings the National Party of the Lib Dems to its lowest ratings in history. And then the week of the election, the local Lib Dem party leader admitted that he was guilty of perjury. And so I come home on the election night with a 700 majority. You should have seen the colour just drain from my face. I was thinking, this is not meant to happen. I suddenly have a platform to promote what I'm interested in. And I'm not used to this, because I'm just some bloke. So I'm like, well, I'm interested in UBI, I'm interested in basic income. Let's see where we can get to with this. But there were no groups set up in Liverpool to pursue this policy at all. There was just nothing. So we created our own, and we used what we already had. Because the thing is about basic income is it doesn't actually solve anything. It just makes things easier to solve. So I worked for a company called Social Enterprise Network, and two of my responsibilities there. Firstly, I was writing policy pamphlets for social enterprises, and secondly, I was doing all of the media outreach. So it's great. I wrote a policy pamphlet that said, how does basic income help people start social enterprises? I crowbarred that into every single thing I could possibly think of. And I put press releases out and sent MailChimp emails to 2,500 people across Liverpool. Big headline, how does UBI help social enterprises? And we built up a little bit of a head of steam. I was a member of the Merseyside Fabian Society, And we put an event on where we said, would a basic income help Liverpool? One of my colleagues somehow managed to get Malcolm Torrey from to come and speak, and we got about 70 people there. And I'm thinking, this is something that was unexpected, but is fantastic. We then set up Liverpool Friends of UBI, which didn't actually go anywhere. About 3 people turned up to the first meeting and nobody turned up to the second. But we kept going. Another colleague, another friend of mine, runs a series of talks that he puts on every 2 or 3 months called Foken. And he's always casting around for people to speak at them and for topics to discuss. So I said, can we talk about basic income? And so we put a panel discussion on for basic income. And we got about 50 people there that night. Now, these might be the same 50 people over and over again, but they do go out and they do evangelise and they do talk about this. And so what we found is that even though there weren't those groups and that infrastructure and that ecosystem there, we built our own. And you can build your own too. You know, there is UBI Lab Sheffield. If you're just some bloke or just some woman or you're just somebody in the street, set up UBI Lab Leeds or Glasgow or Birmingham or Bristol. Describe yourself as the co-founder of UBI Lab, wherever you're from. Put a press release out. I am John Smith, co-founder of UBI Lab blah. People take you seriously. Bizarrely, they take me seriously, God knows why. So create your own ecosystem, create your own infrastructure. It's easier than you think to do that. I'll talk very briefly, just to finish, on how we managed to get the Mayor of Liverpool to agree to UBI. We were lucky, but we took our chances. Because what happened is that on July 31st last year, there was an article in the national press saying that Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell wants to pilot UBI in the next Labour manifesto. Now, if you know anything about politics, you know that July 31st is not the time that you trailblaze brand new important policy announcements. Everybody's on holiday, nobody cares. We cared. We decided, me and 3 or 4 others in Liverpool, we were going to be pursuing this, take our chances. So this was on 31st of July. On the 1st of August, we sat down and wrote a motion that we'd put to the next town hall meeting. And the motion said, we call on the Chief Exec of Liverpool City Council to write to John McDonnell to ask to be included in the pilot of the next Labour manifesto's UBI proposal, or whatever it was that we phrased it. So within 2 or 3 days of that press report coming out, that there's a possibility of UBI in the next Labour manifesto, and to be fair, it was the time of year when nobody's paying attention to these things. It was already in the cogs were in motion within the Liverpool City Council. That's my time up, but I'll just finish. Within the Liverpool City Council process to have us pass a motion at the town hall calling for UBI to be implemented and calling for my city to be a part of the pilot. Come September, we pass that. That gets agreed with cross-party unanimity across the whole chamber, because we also have problematic politics in Liverpool. We don't have any Tories, but we do have Greens and we do have Lib Dems. We actually have 2 old Liberal Party councillors who've been there for 35 years, refused to join the Liberal Democrats back in the 1980s because they're so, whatever. And the 90 of us, it was passed unanimously to say that the next Labour government should consider Liverpool as the pilot city for UBI. Because of that, we then get press reports, we then get a bit of publicity. Simon hears about us and has jealousy and envy all over the place and invites me to speak here this morning. I'm over time. Thanks very much for listening.
How cool is that?